You're tuned in to More Living with Jim Brogan, broadcast live from the Brogan Financial Studios at News Talk 98.7, where old-fashioned values, expert knowledge, and genuine understanding come together to give you the retirement straight talk you deserve. Jim's a former National Advisor of the Year recipient and a financial educator, and he's here today to talk about how you can live out the best years of your life. Jim and the Brogan Financial team have been helping retirees and pre-retirees across the Southeast for over 20 years in their pursuit of financial independence. You can reach them during the week at 865-862-6800. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn, because More Living with Jim Brogan starts now.
Security strategist with Financial Independence Group in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's been in the financial services industry since 2001, and he has trained and supported over 1,000 financial professionals worldwide in Social Security benefit analysis. He's been a longtime friend of the show, been on several times over the years. As an accomplished speaker and a National Social Security Advisor designee, he's known for helping advisors confidently communicate complex strategies to their clients. He has become a go-to for me over the years when we get hung up on a particular Social Security rule or need to double-check or fact-check something. He has become our go-to guy. So we're excited to have him here to share his expertise on maximizing Social Security benefits. Happy Saturday, Hamilton, and welcome to More Living. Great to have you back.
Good morning. Good morning. It is a great morning, and I am actually coming to you from Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
Charlotte today.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm going to be up there in Boston or at the conference. Are you going to be there at the conference in a week?
I will be there as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I have to say, before we get into our topic today, Hamilton, we had to have you on this week and not next week, because next week is the third Saturday of October.
Yes, this is a true statement.
And you are a big Alabama fan, for those of our listeners that haven't put two and two together, and I'm a big Tennessee fan. We have won 2 of the last 3, you know.
Yes. But we won't go back to the last 17, right?
No, we won't go. No, we just start counting 3 years ago. Yeah, we just start counting 2 years ago. Well, okay, Hamilton, you've been in financial services since 2001. You actually support other financial professionals. What made you decide to start focusing on Social Security work and that be your specialty?
Yeah, so in the office, we try to have different ways to support advisors that we work with, and Social Security was such a big piece of that puzzle. And I mean, where do people go to get information about Social Security? You can call Social Security, but you never know if you're going to get the right answer or not. So that really kind of started the process. And then I went through some training, some gentlemen up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I actually went to 2 of their trainings. And just started from there, and boom, here we are, a little over 10 years later.
Well, and in fact, Hamilton, you talk about calling Social Security to get answers. The law actually prevents Social Security employees from giving advice, right?
Yes, that is correct. Not that it stops them from doing it, but yes, they're not supposed to.
Well, that's an interesting word. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get into all the ins and outs and decisions people make. I want to start with the solvency of Social Security. I think the new numbers are 2034, the trust fund will run out. What is your view? Because I'm getting asked this more and more, especially people in their 50s. So what, in your view, what's the long-term outlook for Social Security solvency? And let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So what I tell people in the seminars that I give, because obviously this topic comes up, is, I ask them, have you ever heard the term too big to fail? Well, Social Security is too big to fail. They're not going to allow it to fail. So I don't believe it's going anywhere. Now, with that being said, obviously there are some changes that have to be made and some tough decisions that are going to have to take place. So the question really comes in is, when are those changes going to come about? Unfortunately, the people who have to make those decisions don't like each other very much. And so trying to get along enough to be able to make some good, solid decisions to make Social Security solvent is pretty tough these days. But it's got to be done, and it's got to be done at this point in time, but before 2033, 2034.
Well, and the short-term nature of our election cycle being every 2 years doesn't help any.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
How should, in your view, Hamilton, and I'm happy to chime in with some thoughts too, but how should individuals plan around potential funding gaps?
Well, that's a great question, because that's, again, one of the things that we talk about in the seminars that I give is that you have to have a solid income plan. Now, that doesn't mean that income plan is set in stone and you can't change it. But what it does allow you to do is it does allow you to pivot in the event those things come about. Because if you do have a solid income plan, then you're also adding in areas to fill in gaps of your income or potential gaps down the road, i.e. if something happens to Social Security.
Yeah, and I think I think staying flexible so you can make a turn.
Mm-hmm.
I think as much as we can create multiple income streams. I do think that as younger folks, I say younger, let's say people under age 60, especially people under age 50, I think that we need to become less reliant on Social Security, less dependent, because people have to understand raising the Social Security age, which it continues to go up. For people born in 1959 that are 66 this year, it's now 66 and 10 months. People born in 1960 and later, it's going to be 67. But if they just raise the Social Security age, the full retirement age, a couple of years to 69, that is effectively a reduction in benefit, right? So, because they're saying if you draw at the same age, you're going to get less money. Right.
That's exactly right, because you're not getting those 8% delayed retirement credits if they increase the full retirement age. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. And so, again, what age group is that going to hit? I don't think they're going to go all the way back to those born between, I would say, 1960 and maybe 1980. But those after that, I think is fair game. And that's what they did in 1983 when they passed the amendment that, up until then it was 65 was the retirement age. And then in 1983 there was an amendment that came out and said, if you were born 1938 and after, the retirement age went up, and it started going up every 2 months, 65 in 2 months, 65 in 4 months, so on and so forth. So I think they'll do that again. The question is, where's that cutoff going to be?
That's a great word. And I think along those lines, one way to reduce or to plan for potential changes is rethinking our retirement timeline decisions in terms of not just when we retire, but even more critically, when we claim for Social Security dependents or benefits. Let's dive into that. How do you analyze? Of course, we can draw at 62. Of course, widowers can draw at 60. The full retirement age is between 66 and 67, and then everybody would need to draw by 70. How do you, Hamilton, analyze the break-even point between claiming benefits at different ages?
Yeah, so that's a starting point for us. And the other starting point is if we're dealing with a married couple, if at all possible, we always want the one who has the higher of the two benefits to wait as long as they possibly can up to age 70, because that benefit's going to last for 2 lifetimes. Because if the higher of the two passes away before the other spouse gets to step up to that higher benefit. And so we always start there in the income plan. And then we run that out in the income plan based off of the particular client's situation, their income needs, what they want to do now versus later, all the different things that we analyze and look at to see, okay, is this the best for them in their particular situation? And then we go from there. And really we let the numbers dictate what we recommend to people. Now, they could always say no. It's their money.
Yeah, I mean, people have to do
what
right. So, and so to use an example, if my wife, Dee Dee, I'm the higher earner because Dee Dee worked for many years. Her primary role was in the home, which unfortunately doesn't pay a lot. So my earnings record is higher than hers. So if she draws at 62, let's use an extreme example, then she's reduced. But if I wait till 70 and I get the maximum benefit I can, then if I die first, she's going to get my full benefit, right? She's no longer penalized for drawing early.
Well, yes and no. So depending
if she's
on
over
when
70,
you pass away.
if she's over 70 when she switches over.
Yeah, absolutely. She's going to get 100% of what you were receiving when you passed away. Absolutely.
And to talk a little bit about, you mentioned 1983, Hamilton, to really kind of view this decision of when to draw, and you said you're a big fan of the higher earning spouse delaying, as am I. There can be exceptions to that, however.
Absolutely.
But talk about, when they determined these rules initially, and they determined, okay, here's the benefit at full retirement age. If you draw early, it's discounted, and here's how much it's discounted. If you delay the benefit, here's how much it goes up. When were those calculated, and what are the ramifications of understanding how life expectancies have changed over the years?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I mean, and that goes back to when Social Security came out. It was signed into law in 1935. But what was the average life expectancy in 1935? It was 62 years old. Well, part about it is that back then you couldn't take Social Security until 65. There was no early retirement in taking Social Security back then. And so over time, they've made the decision to adjust that to where you could take an early Social Security, 62. You had to take a later Social Security, age 70. And trying to deal with the life expectancies increasing now, we're in the early 80s for life expectancies versus 62. And obviously that has a huge ramification, especially now because what? We have all these baby boomers that are retiring by the millions every single day, and we don't have the workers coming into the workforce to take their place.
Which is why we're eating. Yeah, which is why we're eating into that Social Security fund. So to really pound that point home, I just want to say in the 80s when those tables were developed, the idea was spread across millions of people. In terms of the budget of Social Security, it really didn't matter when people would draw, right? I mean, some would draw early, some would wait, some would draw at full retirement age. But over a law of large numbers, it would be budget neutral to Social Security. But that was based on life expectancies over 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And they haven't made any changes to that. We're still living off of that, and people are living longer, much longer.
Yep. We're visiting with Hamilton Morales. He's a Social Security expert. He's with Financial Independence Group. When we come back, we're going to dive into some of the rules. We want to talk about how they actually determine your benefit. What happens if you draw and you still make more money? How does that happen? What if you draw early? How's all that calculated? And then how do you need to understand a little bit better about spousal benefits and widow benefits? So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm your host, Jim Brogan. We're with you every Saturday, 9 to 10 a.m., and again, 3 to 4 p.m. You can also podcast us online. We have all our shows at YouTube, we do have them on YouTube and then Apple Podcast and Spotify. Today we're visiting with Hamilton Morales. He is a Social Security expert, and he's really become my go-to guy when I get hung up on a question. And he's over in Charlotte with Financial Independence Group. Let's dive into this a little bit more detail, Hamilton. Talk about the Social Security benefit formula, because people don't really understand how this is calculated. We have this averaged index monthly earnings. Talk about how the full retirement age benefit is calculated.
Yeah. So a lot of people think it's just based off of the 40 credits, and what they don't realize is that's just how you qualify for the benefits. The actual calculation is based off of your earnings, and what they do is they look at your highest 35 years of earnings, and they adjust those for inflation through age 59. So let me explain that, because people get all confused. If you continue to work into your 60s, they'll still use those incomes as part of your highest 35 years. They just do not adjust them for inflation. So that's the only difference. So highest 35 years adjusted for inflation through age 59. They add those together, and they divide by 420, which is the amount of months in 35 years. And that's going to give you what you're called your AMI, your average indexed monthly earnings. And then they run that number through what they called bend points, B-E-N-D. There's 3 of them, and those bend points change every year for most people. In fact, they don't lock in for an individual until the year that person turns 62. So whatever the bend point is the year they turn 62, that will lock in for them moving forward, which means that the closer you get to full retirement age, the more accurate that number on your statement is going to be.
Yeah, so I just turned 56, Hamilton, a couple months ago. So when I look at my Social Security statement, they're looking at my earnings record through last year. And so what kind of assumptions is Social Security making, or are they, when they project my future benefit at age 67, as an example?
Yeah, they're making several. I mean, the first thing they're making is they're assuming you're going to continue to work, making the same amount of money until full retirement age. So that they're doing the calculation based off of that. Also, they're using 2025 bend point numbers. Well, like I just said, those bend points change every year. So when they recalculate it next year, they're going to calculate based off of whatever the 2026 bend points are. And so every year it's going to be different until you actually turn on your benefit.
So there's just so much to think about there. Let's talk about the person who, let's say I'm 56 and I'm planning on retiring in a couple of years. What are the implications when I look at my Social Security statement as to what my highest 35 years may look like?
Yeah, that is a really great question, because, again, they're making the assumption you're going to continue to work until your full retirement age, which for you is 67.
At my current rate of income.
At your current rate of income. So if all of a sudden, let's say in 4 years, at 60 years old, you decide you're going to hang it up and not work anymore, well, that is going to have an impact on your Social Security benefits, because they're, again, assuming you're going to continue to work until 67. So that's 7 years of income paying into Social Security at the rate you're at now, that's not going to be in there. And so how big of an impact will that be? It varies from person to person. That's why I have software to run those numbers. But I will tell you this, for most people that have 35 plus years of earnings paid into the system, it's not as huge as you think it would be. It's still big, but it's not as big as you think it would be.
Yeah, and then what I've seen is the later people work, somebody that retires at 55, even if they have 35 years of earnings, it's going to be a bigger difference, because usually even inflation adjusted, those last 10 years are your highest earnings, whereas if somebody retires at 63, those differences aren't going to be as vast when you look at what it would be at 67. At least that's what I found in my experience.
Yes, and I agree with that.
So how does the earnings test work for people, Hamilton, who claim before retirement age, full retirement age, and what are those long-term implications?
Yeah, that's very important to consider, because once you turn on your Social Security benefits in your past 12 months, there's no stopping it. You can't stop it at that point in time. So if you decide to go back to work while taking your benefits prior to full retirement age, you're going to be subject to the earnings test. And what the earnings test says, and this only has to do with earned wages. Pensions don't apply, rental income doesn't apply, distributions off of your retirement accounts, that does not apply. It's only earned wages. And so for 2025, Social Security says you can earn $23,400, no problem. But if you go over that in your wages, for every $2 you go over, they're going to withhold $1 of your Social Security benefits. Well, then the next logical question is, well, how much would that be? That's an easy calculation. You take your gross annual income, you subtract it by $23,400 because that's the exempt amount, and whatever is left you divide by 2, and that tells you how much they're going to withhold in those benefits. So you can really make a decision on, does it make sense for me to go back even if they're going to withhold it or not? Depending on how much they do, we make a determination based off of that. But you got to be careful because you can't stop it.
Now, if they do withhold that benefit, though, I mean, you get credit based on your Social Security record as if you didn't draw that, correct?
Yeah, so basically what ends up happening is whatever they withhold, whenever you decide to retire or you hit full retirement age, whichever happens first, they're going to take that amount of money, they're going to recalculate it back into your benefit based off of life expectancy. So as long as you live to life expectancy on your benefit, you'll get it all back.
So let's dive into a few kind of more unknown things. So first off, Hamilton, are there any lesser-known rules or exceptions in the Social Security Code that tend to surprise even financially savvy clients?
And you got to give me that ahead of time. I have to think through that one.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk about spousal benefits. How about we do that? Because a lot of people misunderstand those. So how can married couples coordinate their claiming strategies to maximize their lifetime combined benefits rather than just focusing on it individually?
Yeah, definitely. So there's 2 different types of spousal benefits, if you will. You've got the spouse that never worked, never hit the 40 credits, so they don't qualify for their own benefit. All they're going to be able to get is the spousal benefit. And then you have that spouse who did work, did get the 40 credits, and they may or may not be qualified to get spousal benefits. And that's where a lot of people get hung up because they think automatically because you're a spouse, you're going to get it. And that's not the case. There's actually an eligibility piece to that. And so when you have a husband and wife and they want to go ahead and start taking Social Security, what's going to happen is they both have to turn on their benefit. Now, it doesn't have to be at the same time, but both of them have to be turned on. And when that happens, Social Security is going to look at, I'm just going to take the husband and wife here. They're going to look at, let's say the wife has the lesser of the 2 benefits. They're going to look at the wife's full retirement age benefit amount, and they're going to compare it to half of the husband's full retirement age benefit amount. If her full amount is greater than his half, she does not qualify for spousal benefit. And that shocks people. Wow, really? I can't get it? Yeah, because your full amount is greater than his half. Now, if her full amount is less than his half, then basically what Social Security does is they subtract those 2 numbers, and the difference is the spousal portion that gets added onto what they're already receiving with their own benefit. So if all this happens prior to full retirement age, that means their benefit's going to be reduced and the spousal portion is going to be reduced. If this happens at or after full retirement age, there's no reduction in their benefit and there's no reduction in the spousal portion. So it just all depends on when they turn it on.
Now, one thing that people often are surprised to hear is, if my wife and I are pretty close in age and I want to delay my benefit to 70, she can draw the spousal benefit, but does it increase if she delays it past age 67?
Yeah. So a lot of times the husband will say, well, I'm going to wait till 70 to turn my benefit on so she can get half of that number. No, that's not how it works.
It's not how it works.
The calculation is always based off of full retirement age, whether you take it early or you take it later.
So if I have a spouse that doesn't even have 40 quarters, which, by the way, a quarter is the 40 credits, one credit would be you worked within one quarter, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if someone has a spouse that doesn't have 40 quarters, 10 years, then they can't even get a benefit until I'm drawing mine.
And that's correct. And it's going to be half of your full retirement age benefit amount, not half of what you're receiving. So
yes.
Again, that's where people get hung up.
And that could affect my strategy as to when I draw, right? I mean, I may not want to wait all the way till 70 because there's no benefit to my wife for waiting past 67.
You got it. And all these things come into play, and that's why it's so important to have an income strategy on paper so you can see how this is going to affect you today, how is it going to affect you later on. You look at the numbers and make a decision based off of that.
We're visiting with Hamilton Morales. He is a Social Security expert, and he's actually a National Social Security Advisor designee, and he's with Financial Independence Group. When we come back, let's talk about divorced couples. We'll get a little bit more into widow benefits, and also some recent changes in the law in terms of the windfall elimination provision if you worked outside the Social Security system for some years. So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
This is More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way, as you listen to News Talk 98.7 WOKI. And I do want to mention my last fall class through Pellissippi State Community College. It's a 2-night class, Thrive Financially in Retirement. It's coming up a week from Tuesday. So that's going to be Tuesday the 21st and the 28th. So it's 2 2-hour sessions at the Hardin Valley campus, free parking. If you want more information, in those 2 2-hour sessions, Eric Ballou in my office, my colleague, we are going to be doing that class together. And we're going to cover 7 main things that we feel like every retiree needs to know, or if you're getting close to retirement, what you need to know about preparing for retirement. They're both at 6:30 p.m., again, at that Hardin Valley campus. For more information, you can go to PellissippiRetirementPlanning.com. Again, PellissippiRetirementPlanning.com. You can download a syllabus. You can also click to register. The course fee is $59 to Pellissippi State for a single person, and for a married couple, it's $89. We'd love to have you there. Last I checked, we're getting pretty full. So I think we got room for about 30 people, and we're already up into the 20s, so we'd love to have you there. Go to PellissippiRetirementPlanning.com. Social Security is one of those 7 core topics, and we're visiting today with Hamilton Morales from Financial Independence Group. He's a good friend of the show, and he's a National Social Security Advisor designee. And let's continue. We were talking about spousal benefits, Hamilton. Let's talk about divorced individuals. How does the 10-year marriage rule work, and how do remarriage restrictions work for both spousal and survivor benefits?
Yeah, because they're a little bit different for the two. So the first things first is when you have a couple that is divorced and they're looking at spousal benefits, let's start there. First of all, Social Security is going to look to see if they had a qualifying marriage. And so a lot of people are like, well, what the heck is qualifying marriage? And that means that they were basically married for 10 consecutive years before they got divorced, number one. Number two, the person who wants to have the spousal benefit, that person must be currently single. Now, the ex-spouse doesn't have to be. that's not going to affect the person who wants the spousal benefit. They can be remarried. It's not going to affect you. But the person who wants the spousal benefit must be currently single. And then the last thing, if you remember when we were talking about a married couple, both spouses had to have their benefits turned on before the spousal calculation would take place. Well, with a divorced couple, the one who wants the spousal benefit, they have to turn their benefit on, but the ex-spouse is not required to turn theirs on. They just have to reach age 62. And there's some obvious reasons why Social Security does that. They don't want them to hold up
cantankerous divorces.
Hey,
cantankerous divorces. I'm going to delay my benefits so he or she can't draw the spousal benefit.
Right.
Now, what about widow benefits? Can you talk about that? And what about widow benefits for divorced spouses? Because that's maybe as overlooked of a benefit as I see. And Social Security is not good at connecting the dots if you're divorced and are eligible for a widow benefit. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So same thing. You had to have a qualifying marriage, married 10 consecutive years before you got divorced. Now, with this one, you can be remarried if your ex-spouse passes away, but as long as you remarried after your 60th birthday, that is the key. So if you remarry somebody prior to your 60th birthday and your ex-spouse passes away, you are not eligible for ex-survivor benefits. But if you remarry after your 60th birthday and your ex-spouse passes away, even though you're remarried, you can still take survivor benefits off of your ex-spouse's work record. So,
and that's important consideration because the widow benefit is 100% of that deceased person's benefit, where the spousal benefit is only half. If somebody's picking,
Correct.
do I want to take my widow benefit or my ex or my spouse benefit with my new spouse?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
So all of those are such important considerations. I guess Social Security felt like we've got older people that are not getting that are widows that are not getting remarried because of Social Security, so they created that age 60 exception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now,
sense.
what if Hamilton, somebody's lost a spouse, and let's say he or she turns 60 and draws that widow benefit? How does that affect their own benefit if they're not drawing, if they're drawing the widow benefit?
Yeah, there's a couple things to deal with there. First of all, you don't get 100% of the widow's benefit if you take it early. So at age 60, you're only going to get 71.5% of it. So you got to keep that in mind. Number two,
because you're drawing it earlier.
Because you're drawing it earlier, correct. Number two is if you continue to work while drawing the benefit early, you're still going to be subject to the earnings test. So that's number two. Now, those two things, or taking the widow's benefit early, does not affect your own benefit. In fact, it's a great strategy. Take the widow's benefit early, let your benefit continue to grow till age 70, and then at age 70, file for your benefit, assuming it's higher. So there's a couple different strategies that we put into place depending on the situation of the widow or widower, to be able to maximize the benefit, whether it's the survivor's benefit or their own benefit. There's a couple different ways we can do that, and we actually help walk them through that so they make a good decision on which one to file for first.
Yeah, and as an example, I have a client who lost her husband several years ago, and the widow benefit is going to be higher than her own benefit. But she hasn't been full retirement age. She just turned her full retirement age this year. And so, she couldn't draw any of those benefits because of the earnings test. But now she can draw her own benefit, and yet the widow benefit continues to increase to 70 since it's the higher benefit, right?
No, actually it doesn't, outside of cost of living adjustments. So the widow's benefit actually does not get the 8% delayed retirement credits. So typically in that scenario, if they're not working, and I know this particular client was working, so it didn't work out for them, but if they were not working, At 62, they would take their own benefit at a reduced amount. And then once they hit full retirement age, they would switch over and take the widow's benefit because it would not be reduced at that point in time. But that's as high as it'll go is full retirement age because you don't get the 8% delayed retirement
So
credit.
it won't get those increases from 67 to 70.
No, only your own benefit gets those.
Now let's talk about the Social Security Fairness Act, Hamilton, and how does that affect things like non-covered employment when people worked for years and they were part of that windfall elimination provision? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there are people out in America who, depending on the state they live in and they work with the state or federal government, they do not pay into Social Security. Ohio is the largest state. 97% of all state workers in Ohio do not pay into Social Security. Well, up until January 5th of this year, they were penalized for that. Maybe they earned Social Security from another job, and it would have been reduced because of what's called the windfall elimination provision. And then the evil twin, government pension offset, GPO, would affect their ability to get spousal and or widow's benefits. And so what they did was, in the 11th hour, literally, I think it was the last bill that they passed through before Congress switched over, the Congress voted to pass it, and it was signed into law on January 5th. And it is the Social Security Fairness Act, which basically eliminated the WEP and the GPO for those people, so they're no longer penalized. And on top of that, they retroed back, so if you were supposed to get one of those, your own Social Security without a reduction or spousal widow's benefit in 2024, but you couldn't because of the WEP or the GPO, they retro back all that money to you for that year as well. So they have completely eliminated that.
That's Hamilton Morales. He's a Social Security expert. When we come back, we're going to dive into just some practical things. How does your Social Security affect tax planning? What about Roth conversions? How does your Social Security strategy maybe even affect your Medicare premium? So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Thanks for tuning in this week to More Living right here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. You can check our podcast. Go to Apple Podcast or Spotify. More Living with Jim Brogan. We also stream all of our shows from the last several years are on our website. If you go to broganfinancial.com and click on radio, you can stream those directly from our website. And I do want to mention again, we're talking about Social Security strategy today with our guest, Hamilton Morales. This is one of the fundamental things that we cover in our upcoming two-part class through Pellissippi State College, and that's Thrive Financially in Retirement is on Tuesdays, October 21st and 28th. So a week from Tuesday, the 21st and 28th. It's a two-night class. Find out more at PellissippiRetirementPlanning.com. Hamilton, let's dive into a couple of kind of things that people may not always think about with their Social Security strategy. Talk about how it might impact our tax planning in retirement.
Yeah, so that is something that I think more and more people understand. There's potentially taxes on their Social Security benefits, but they don't really understand how it works. And then it just got even more confusing with the One Big Beautiful Bill, where taxes were supposed to be eliminated and technically were not. So let me explain that one real quick just to kind of clear the air so people understand exactly what happened with that bill and how it's going to affect them and their taxes on Social Security benefits. So the House passed the bill that went up to the Senate, and when they passed the bill, it had no taxes on Social Security benefits. Once the Senate got the bill, they changed it. And so instead of having no taxes on Social Security benefits, what they decided to do was to increase the standard deduction. And so you had the standard deduction increase Then you have a 65 plus deduction, which was always there. That made that permanent. But then they added what I call a bonus 65 plus deduction, and that is for a married couple $12,000 and for a single person $6,000 additional standard deduction on top of that. So if you're married and you're over 65, you're talking over $46,000 of standard deduction of your taxes. Yes, standard deduction. So how does that affect your Social Security benefits? Well, the way they still calculate the benefit or the taxes the same way. What the standard deduction may do for you if you are able to take the full thing, and I'm just throwing these percentages out there, don't hold me to these numbers, but just to give an example, let's say you're at a 24% marginal tax bracket, and because of the standard deduction, it drops you down to 12%. So instead of paying Social Security taxes at 24%, you're paying them at 12%. So, yeah, it's still a good thing, but you're paying taxes on your Social Security benefits. And it's all based off of provisional income to see if anywhere between 50 all the way up to 85% of your benefits will be taxable at whatever tax bracket that you're at. So that's the key, is provisional income.
And in determining those numbers, you know, half of your Social Security income counts against you on provisional income. So, you know, when we talk about our filing strategy, anytime we keep numbers off of the tax return, it gives us more tax planning opportunities. So I'm not saying everybody should delay their benefit just because of tax planning, but one additional benefit of delaying Social Security is you can do more tax planning, right? You can keep your tax bracket lower and then do more things like Roth conversions, capital gains tax planning, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's the big key is being able to do that, using those standard deductions to take advantage of doing Roth conversions. Now, we're already at a discount tax-wise. We know that. So now you go above and beyond that with the standard deduction and take advantage of that while you can, for sure.
Hamilton, how might our income and our Social Security strategy affect our Medicare premium?
Well, you know, Medicare Part B premium, and I'm not as fluent in that as I am Social Security, but with that being said, we all know Medicare Part B premiums we have to pay once we turn 65, assuming we don't have a company-sponsored plan, we have to file for Medicare Part B. And the premiums for that are based off of the income we have coming in. So if you're not careful, you could do things in such a way that increases your taxable income, which could increase your Medicare Part B premium. That's called IRMA. I can't remember what that stands for, but it will increase your Medicare Part B premiums. And now that's not a permanent increase, but it is an increase. And if you don't know it's coming, it's quite the shock.
And Medicare is actually our topic for next week, and that IRMA stands for income-related Medicare adjustment amount. And we're going to have a local guest on, Kevin Kragenbrink, and talk specifically about Medicare next week, Medicare supplements, all those things. We just have just a few seconds left here, Hamilton. Give us the latest on cost of living adjustment for Social Security benefits going into next year.
Yeah, so those should be coming out here pretty soon. I haven't seen them yet. If they have come out, I've seen everything ranging from 2.5 to 3.5. So we will see what that looks like. I'm anticipating that coming out here real soon, probably within the next week or so. And so we'll know what the cost of living adjustment is going to be going into 2026.
Yeah, and I actually read this week, getting ready for the show, that it should have come out by now, but it's been delayed because of the government shutdown.
Oh, shocker.
So they delayed the announcement of the COLA. Yeah, what a shocker. Hey, Hamilton, we are out of time. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday morning. Next Saturday, I will be dressed all in orange, as you will be dressed in crimson red. Go Big Orange. Thank you so much, Hamilton, for your time.
You're very welcome. Hope you have a wonderful weekend.
That's Hamilton Morales, financial expert on Social Security. He's with Financial Independence Group. Today we've discussed your Social Security strategy because greater income and greater wealth provides for more living so you can live the best years of your life your way. Many thanks to Wayne for engineering the show and to Mary Caroline for helping produce the show. Have a great weekend. You've been listening to More Living with Jim Brogan right here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
The views expressed by Jim Brogan and his guests are not that of Cumulus Media. Any discussion of financial, legal, and tax planning strategies is not intended to be individualized advice and is general in nature. Always consult with your advisor for advice specific to your needs. This program's content does not represent a recommendation of any particular security, strategy, or investment by Jim Brogan or Brogan Financial Incorporated.